Hello and welcome back to the series where I'm building out this front-end mentor project. We're entering the home stretch, so let's dive into the code and get up and running so we can get this finished off. And here I am in VS Code, just in case you want to follow along from exactly where I am. You can get the GitHub repo to the previous one, which was part 9. We just need to do an npm, or let's do first a clear so it's not all mucked up, npm install, and then we can do our npm run dev and get up and running with this one. All right, so npm run dev, and let's see where we're leaving off and what we're going to be doing in this one, because we finished the carousel, and we do have some house cleaning and just general fixing up of things that does need to be done. And so I'm just going to drag that over there. We'll put this right here. And yeah, overall, things are coming together and they're actually pretty good. So I do think we're going to be cleaning things up and trying to fix the overall everything. We're not going to get to everything. We'll start at the top and do as much as we can. And so I think the main focus of this one is going to be to bring in those two background image-y area things, blobs, whatever they are, and we'll also get the mobile version of this working properly at the same time because the order of them is wrong. And then there is some other fixing up of general stuff that does need to be done overall, but I think we'll do that in one final video because the big focus of that one will probably be the footer and getting all of that. So we're super close to the home stretch, and let's jump into it. So here is what we're trying to do, is these shapes coming in the background. And one of the difficult things with this actually is they're completely different and in different positions. Like here, this one is sort of linked, you know, it's closer to here. And the second one, our larger screen sizes, it's just not in the same place at all. So figuring out what to do in between those, like we have no information on when this change should happen, though I'm guessing it'd be probably something to do with when this splits off into two columns, just because then we have the empty space, so it's sort of filling up that empty space a little bit. So we'll probably just use a media query and position that in some way. So I just need to figure out, we might actually do this even though it's all the way up here as part of this, as a pseudo element on that. So it just becomes, you know, we're just positioning it up a little bit from there, and then over here it's down here. The reason I'm thinking that is because if I did it with this, and then we're just moving it so far away. So I think it's more linked with this, whereas this one is a little bit easier because it's always linked. It doesn't move really. It's exactly the same at the different screen sizes. So let's go and do that then. We've already set something like that up as a pseudo element, but it was a while ago and I forgot how I did it. But this is something, if you are working on a project and let's say you're on your sprint and you're not, you didn't create this part down here, but you've seen that shape used somewhere else. Well, let's go see how we did that, because it was a while ago that I did it. So I'm just looking for some pseudo elements to see what I did. And here we go. It was definitely on the call to action. And in this case, I set it up as two different background images because we had two of them depending on the screen size and stuff, right? Because right now there's one, but I think when we get to there it is, at larger screen sizes, the other one sort of moves into that space. So one question, the first thing that sort of comes to my mind when I see this is, can I reuse a lot of stuff here or not really? Things that are the same would be this, this, this. The inset might not be. The background image won't be the same because we only need one of them instead of two. Background position will be completely different. So there could be an argument made where maybe you set something up that gets the base put in and then you're repositioning it somewhere else. But in this case, I think all I'm going to do is actually copy this, and we're just going to come in with our own something else that we'll use. So one of those pseudo elements will come on here and another one will be here. We could definitely just set them as background images on their own without the pseudo elements. It's just easier to move a pseudo element where you need it to be, I think, than it is to do it just as its own background image. Actually, okay, let's go look at my HTML, because this was my main. Okay, so see, we have this, if we look here, we have the two columns coming here. Let me just shrink this down. So because we have two columns, we have this column here and this column here, I didn't only have my image on its own here. I have the image is inside a div, which means I could do this as a background image on that div. Then the nice thing with that versus, yeah, so we don't really need the pseudo element in this case is what I'm trying to get at. And the same thing here, we could just do it as a background image maybe on that, but maybe not. Because if it's a background image, this one probably could work. But this one, because we actually need to move it like way up at smaller screen sizes, it won't work because you can't overflow a background image. And even this one, if we did it as a background image on that div, it can't escape out of the div. And we do have like our padding and stuff down the sides. Like here, let's just do a style equals one border, 1 pixel solid red. So there, like we can't escape outside of that. So if we want to overflow it out, getting that to work with a background image on its own would actually be pretty tough. This would be something also, just if we had a bigger site, like we were doing all these pages, and we were seeing these in a lot of different places, I'm thinking now, like, this doesn't make much sense to have it as the CTA background only. I'd probably have a specific class. So this could still be my call to action, but there might be like a separate class saying like 2 things, because I bet this pattern would probably repeat itself somewhere else. And right now, because I do need to add a class here to get one on that, it would be kind of useful to have a class that sort of involves that shape. One thing is you could actually put the pseudo element on the image if you were in Chrome, but anywhere else you can't do it. So just because Chrome allows you to put pseudo elements on replaced elements, whereas no other browser does, and I'm pretty sure the spec says you're not supposed to, but maybe the spec changed and Chrome's the only one that updated. Not sure. I never looked into it because I never really needed to. It is kind of annoying that we can't do it outside of Chrome though, but let's do class is equal to. We want to get that, what's that shape called? We have a background image. I'm just going to paste it. It's BG, I mean, and the name of that doesn't help. Hero, I'm just going to call this hero image. Did I call that even? I never even had hero anywhere. So section, I'm not even going to style this, but just in case we ever needed to, or we might need to play with the flow and stuff like that. So I'm going to call it hero image, even though I haven't really done too much with that there. We have used this naming class in other places, because I can't think. The problem with these shape things that we're bringing in now, or maybe it's image with shape, image with blob BG. Blob's not the right word, but like something like if we switched out the image, or it doesn't need to, like maybe you get the same thing, but like down here you have another section that's similar that has an image that has that on it, or you're on another page and it's halfway down the page. It doesn't make sense to do it on the hero. So whatever, that's what we're going to call it. Perfect. So let's come down, numbered items. In a way, this is a utility class. In a way, it's a component. It's one of those things that sort of gets in the middle of the two of them, but let's come right here. And we'll just make its own section. So image with blob BG. So there we go. And so we don't need, let's do a position of relative on here. I'm not sure if we're going to keep this, but I'm just thinking it's going to be easier to have it positioned relative to this, but we might be able to do it to the viewport. But because it moved, I think we're going to have this here, and we're going to have to do something to like pull it to the edge of the screen, potentially. Yeah, and I don't know if we're going to need that to have its own stacking content or not. So let's do this as a before. Again, it could be an after. It doesn't really change much in the grand scheme of things. And we need that background image, which I saved in my clipboard right there. That's that. So here we're going to do a position absolute. Let's just do a left of 0 and a top of 0 for now, which is going to change. We'll give it a width of 100%, which won't work perfectly, but that would be 100% of the parent, I believe. And height of, or let's just do an aspect ratio now, just so it shows up. Or aspect ratio of 1, just so we get like a square. Okay, so it's there. Obviously it's not working. And so here we're going to do a background position of top right, I think. No, bottom left. There we go. That's what we need, right? Let's just go look. Like we need that. It might actually be positioned really close to what we need there. We might need to tweak it a little bit, but I'm pretty happy. Oh, see, we do need it. This is what I talked about. I was going to sort of cheat to get it to fill up the space, but maybe we're going to take this off. I'm worried this is going to cause more problems than it's going to help solve, but let's see. Background, repeat. And let's do the Z index right away. Z index of -1. Okay. Now, the bottom left obviously doesn't work. And the width of 100% also, this is going to be relative to the viewport. So I actually think we should set like a set size on, a set width on it, because it does seem to like be smaller here, which gets tricky because then the positioning of it is kind of weird. Okay, let's try with the set size and see where we go from here. So I'm just going to put 400 pixels just to see. Okay, and then we can go top right. Top right. Why is it? Oh, let's just put a border 1 pixel solid red so we can see. Oh, background position. Top right is sorry, I was doing top right like I wanted the actual positioning. This we still want it to be bottom left. So we get the bottom corner of it, and it's here where let's do this as a right of 0 and a top of 0. Better. So let's just try making this 500 instead, and we'll do 450. I don't like mucking around with these things so much. The aspect ratio, instead of setting a height, I'm just gonna change the aspect ratio 1/1.2, because that's just gonna make it taller. 1.3 and 420. And I'm just like, I know here I want it to like not kind of go there, and actually it should be shorter too. Because I'm using aspect ratio, it's a little weird because if I reduce the width, I'm also reducing the height. Which is actually, we're getting pretty close to what I want, but this is not going to be responsive at all. 380. So that's actually pretty close to what we want, right? But what I'm concerned about now is that. So this is one of the joys of those things where you create it statically, and then when things change, it doesn't work how you wanted it to, but luckily I sort of knew that would happen. I just need to figure out what the best solution for that is. Because if we leave it positioned with this too, I think it's going to look really weird at larger screen sizes. So it's almost like, is this a better solution where it stays out there? For something that like when the designer makes this, they think it's going to be very simple. And then when we get this is where it'd be nice to be able to have a discussion with the designer to be like, what would really be the desired behavior? So another option that we could do is actually make this width, instead of being static, we could make this width change. So just to show you, if I did 50% on it, the aspect ratio is going to muck things up, so we might have to set a static height on it. But the advantage with that then is you can see that the left side's not actually changing because the left is always lined up with the 50% point. So maybe this is actually a better solution. Which would get changed in a media query. So let's do this the way we should be doing it, which is mobile first. So we'll put the dev tools on and let's make this small. We're going to do a few things. The order here, so to get this really to work, the order of this will need to be switched anyway. So how do we switch the order? Here we have in even columns. So if for my even columns, I did use grid. And then we get one column there, one column there. Now the advantage with using flex instead of grid is it's easy to inverse the order of things. One thing is, if you are changing the order of stuff with CSS, we want to be very careful to make sure that, like, especially if there's tabbing, but even just if you're looking at it and like, you shouldn't be setting the reading order by playing with stuff in CSS. But here we're just moving an image to the top to the bottom. So for me, that's completely fine. So I'm actually going to do this with a data order equals inverse, maybe, but that doesn't really make sense. Our even column, 1 second. Let's go look at my even columns. Even column. So we did a display grid, or you know what, actually, the easier thing might be just because here I wouldn't actually keep it on this. So image, I wouldn't let's just go here. We'll say order is 0, -1. There we go. So we could do that just on an individual basis, and then in a media query, we just take that off. Or we could even say small only. I've never made a utility class to do something like that. I'm just trying to think what the best option is for how we would do that. Because it's like order -1 at small screen sizes. I don't know. I wouldn't want to link it with my image with blob.bg. Because again, the idea here is that, see, but even the image with blob.bg doesn't really work. We're going to switch this back to hero image. Hero image. Because depending on where the image is, this isn't going to work. And this is something that's very unique. It's not really related to the position of the image itself. So this is going to become my hero. Let's take this here. I was trying to get a little bit too, I was trying to do things that probably weren't really feasible. And then let's just copy you. We're going to do at media max width of 50M, because that's when my breakpoint is. And then this actually gets brought inside of there. So let's save that. And the reason I'm doing this in a max width media query rather than doing it a different way around is just because then I don't have to overwrite it to change it back to the default. So here the image is at the top, and then we're outside of the media query, and it just goes back to what the default was and keeps the original order. So yes, it's not mobile first, but it means we're writing less CSS, so that's a good thing. So that switches here. Now the one problem is it's not centered, and things look really bad here. But I think, did we do a text center small only? We did. Did they do text align center? Let's open Figma again for a second. At small screen sizes, they did. Okay, good. So we're going to use that text align small only on the whole hero area. Text align center small. Was it small or small only? Text, let's copy and paste. Text center small only. So it's centered. So here it's like that, then it gets centered. Now the image ideally would also be centered. I have a display block on my images because it solves problems, but it means that text align center won't have an impact on it. So what we could do, I don't think, where's my margin? Margin, let's do dot margin. Let's just do an MX auto, margin inline auto. And that's just handy for those times where we need something centered, MX auto. So that moves over to the middle. And the reason that's nice to have is like even here, the margin inline auto on that, it's already filling up the entire space available to it anyway. So it shouldn't really cause any layout changes. And then it's centered here, which makes more sense. It is very tall, but so like maybe where this happens should actually be a little bit different. I'm not sure, but there we go. So now because that's working, we can fix our blobby shape thing. So let's find that again. That was my hero image before. So I think the width of this will actually be closer to 80%, 90%, 95, and then I'm going to bring that to a 1.2. So if we look there, and then I look at Figma, not quite the same actually. I thought it had to come out the end, but it doesn't. So 85, 87. I think that looks pretty close. It's probably a little bit too tall, but like this side is lining up really nicely, and obviously we're not at exactly the same thing, and it's a little bit like moves around and stuff a little bit. Here it's not ideal. I think we're taking up way too much real estate. Maybe the margin on the top could be smaller, but we're okay. And then it looks kind of weird. Maybe what we'll do is actually put, I didn't set a height, but we could set a max height of 70 viewport height. And that way, like at these small screen sizes, it's fine. It's based on the width, but then it sort of never gets taller than what we were at, which seems to really work well. Good guess, Kevin. So it sort of locks it in and it won't pull it down as far. You could also use DVH now, which is dynamic viewport height. The browser support's not perfect. So I mean, we could do this max height of 70 VH and then that. So like if the browser doesn't know what this one is, it will use that as the fallback. The dynamic viewport height means like, you know, in iOS, we have that like, depending if the viewport thing, the address bar and other stuff are visible or not, the height is actually different. This takes that into account. In a situation like this, it wouldn't really matter because it's this little decorative background image. But yeah, that works good. And then let's just come here at media, min width of 50M. I am thinking the 50 was actually maybe not the best choice. We could always change that in our final video when we clean everything up and make sure everything is wrapped up. But then here, this, get the same selector. Can't wait for nesting in CSS. We don't have to do that. And then we can come and say that no, I do want it to be around 45 to 50%. So let's just come here and say about 40, 48. I'm just thinking like 50%. We have 2 even columns. We have a gap in the middle. So like that should work-ish. I think the 45 actually was the right number. So it's there, then we get to the 2 columns, and then as it increases in size, it sort of locks into that spot, and it pulls away a little bit, but overall it's not too bad. It's not, I think here maybe isn't perfect, but like I would probably ask the designers about what's happening there. You know what, we're gonna do this really fast. We're gonna do a control find, but we're gonna find a min width of 50M, and we're going to replace it, just so I don't muck up. I don't think I have another 50M anywhere. We're going to replace it with a min width of like 47. Just so that yes, I want everything to be going at that slightly different size, and then we can do a replace all and hit save. And now I think it's just when that happens, it'll be a little bit better, except the only problem is we had a few max widths too. So let's just make sure we do both of the max. Now, I'm not doing this perfectly either. Replace all, save. There we go. So yeah, that looks like a better spot to make that break to me. It was happening a little too wide before. It's still not perfect in my view, because like if you're on like a small phone, oh, you know what? Maybe we're okay. That doesn't look too bad. And that's at like very small sizes. I think ideally more of the text would be in view, but it's still kind of awkward here, right? But I guess like I'm in a square, so like usually you'd be like that, or you'd be on something like that. So anyway, we'd have to, you'd want a bit more testing and everything, but for like a quick throw together, I'm actually pretty happy with how that's lining up. Pretty good. While we're up here and we are fixing things up, one thing that we did break a while back was the Z index of stuff. See here? That's not great. And now that I changed that breakpoint, I'm wondering if that should be centered or not. It's kind of weird, that decision I made. So let's start by fixing this, where the text is leaking through and stuff. And see even like these colored things, the text is coming through, but even like this isn't underneath that shadow. So that was a whoopsie on my part. So we'll fix that today. And that was my nav. So let's go look at my nav. Navigation. We did this all, so display none, position fixed. It's probably just this that we need to do. Z index of, we'll just do 100. You know what, we're gonna do a 999 to say like never go. So it's working-ish. I am gonna center it. I remember we talked about that, but we're just gonna do a margin inline of auto. I mentioned it at the time, but I think that works a little better. So yeah, you can see here, this is also on top. Anything that had pseudo elements and some positioning and other stuff, these guys, they're all coming on top of the shadow. So this is position fixed and a Z index. And then this position fixed. Primary header, that's on my primary navigation. Primary header, so we might not actually need to change primary header. Everything is inside the primary header. So actually, we don't need the Z index on the navigation. We only need the Z index over here. Z index of 999 should fix it, but it doesn't. So everything is gone. Position fixed. Isolation, isolate? Really? Z index of 1000. Oh, okay, sorry. I thought we were focusing on the primary header itself. We're just looking at the before. That is why. Okay, that makes more sense. So I was so confused there. Let's take not all of that off. Let's take this off from here. This off from here. We could do it with putting Z index on both of them, but why don't we just take this, put that, and then do a position relative isolation isolate Z index. I don't even position relative. We don't need this anymore because this is creating a stacking context anyway, and then this can get that on it, and now that's all fine. And now everything, so what this is doing, and the reason I did that is now anything that's inside the primary header that has the data overlay on it, attribute on it, is anything inside of there is going, like that whole thing is being pulled forward. So we have the navigation that's in there, we have the before, all of that is coming with it, and is positioned with this. Even though these are position fixed, they're position fixed within this stacking context. So they don't, nothing ends up below that shadow and the other weird stuff that was going on. There'd be no harm in giving each one of these its own Z index. It works. It's just, I sort of like cleaning things up and saying like the parent is what's controlling the stacking context, and then everything else you're not too stressed about. Because as soon as you start having to play with multiple Z indexes, it gets messy after a while. So I like trying to keep that as clean as possible. And 999, I try and say like, this is the top. I hopefully don't have to go higher. You know, and if you do, you just do 1000, whatever. But that is that. I think that's good. So we've got, oh, we're here. So let's do this one last thing. We actually have to do some JavaScript for that. Where the thing I forgot to do was to change the image that's here. So let's go look here where we do have the two, we have the icon hamburger and icon close, and we just have area hidden on both is fine. Why do we see one and not the other one? Oh, we were doing that, I guess. Okay, wait, dot icon close display none. Okay, so here we had, when we click, primary navigation has data visible. We want nav toggle set attribute to false. If not, we do true. Toggle attribute, I mean, we could do both of those, I guess. So is actually on here, we don't include either one of the images. And we do it with CSS instead, because then we could say, so data visible, yeah. So when, I don't know if this is gonna work, let's try. Data visible, dot mobile nav toggle, background image is the URL. Images, icon close, because if it's visible, it's open. And I save that, so it's probably there, but we just don't have a width or height on it. So I know it's off. So here in the DevTools, nav wrapper button is there. So yeah, it's basically invisible right now. So we could go here. We have all of this. We have some padding. We could just say width. I'm going to say 5em for now, just so we can actually get it, and an aspect ratio of 1, so it's a square. Oh, it's we can't see it either. There, it's, oh, it's there, but we don't see a background image on it. Button. Data overlay. Oh, see, I did the same thing. I'm looking for the nav, but I'm not in the nav, I'm over here. So what I can actually do is base it on the area expanded being true or false, instead of doing it on this one, which even is better. The nice thing with this too is it sort of forces some accessibility in here. So let's change this out for mobile nav toggle, area expanded equals true, save. Background image is still not appearing. What is happening? So in my dev tools, mobile nav toggle area expanded. Haha, there we go. So let's just try 1M, but there's a few different things, advantages. Whoa, why do I have an arrow? Is that just a weird... Just the way it was working. Okay, so on the background image here, and even what we could just say is here, I was going to do it without that, but we have this here. You don't need the not. We can just set a background image here of icon hamburger. Hamburger. So the nice thing with this is it forces us to use the accessibility here with it. So if you did recreate it. And then what we could say is the background size, instead of using cover, because cover can cause things to be cropped, we want to use the other one, background size of contain. I don't use it often enough, but the nice thing with contain is you know you're getting your entire image and it's not going to be cropped. And I think here my width will be like a 1.75. We'll do rem just so it's not based on anything. It looks a bit big actually. Okay, so then if we close it, we get the hamburger and we get that. Now the other problem is we still have a background repeat, no repeat, and we can also do background position of center, just so it's right in the middle of our button. And there we go. That's working. So there, yeah, I think that works out well. One thing to take into consideration with this, maybe it's a bit big, 6.5. They're small, I should say, make it a little bit bigger. One thing just to, like here I'm using the longhand of background. I find the shorthand for background extremely hard because you need to get the properties in a specific order. It makes for one really long selector. You're not going to bloat your code by doing it this way. And I just find it makes it easier to maintain personally. If you like using the shorthand, go for the shorthand. But I find using the longhand for these things so much easier. So the navigation's fixed. We've got our background blob thing there. We need one more that I completely forgot about. I was like, we're wrapping up this video, guys. So we do want to bring up the other one that's over here. Oh, I was so sure we were done. I was excited. I'm happy with the progress we just did. This one should go pretty fast though. So let's go and do that. Let's go look at my HTML. Did I name that area? Hero, container, even columns. That's this area here, right? What's different? We have, so what are we calling this? Because again, the positioning of it becomes like, it's because there's an empty space that it's working. And then it's switching sides at smaller screen sizes. Because here it's over there and moved way up, and then here it's over here and way down. So again, we can't really make that like a generic utility. You could have a utility that's like putting it in, but then you're just moving it around so much anyway. I don't know what this was supposed to be, guys. I'm just going to delete it. It's not doing anything. I must have had a margin I was wanting to do. Whoops. Okay. Container, even columns flow. So we'll do it on this section. Call it sales points. Sales points. And let's get this looking good. So we're going to start with the mobile version because it does make more sense to start there. So we'll set things up so we're looking at it properly. And in this case, it actually needs to end up being over there. So let's come, where did I do my other blob? Hero, this should probably be moved up. Let's just put this though as hero image. So that's for like my hero section. So we'll just call that hero, even though it's the only thing we have on there right now. It doesn't like that I have max height 2 times, but again, I did do that on purpose just to create a fallback. But yeah, just a little linting there saying, are you sure? So here, let's add in my sales points. I'm calling it that, sales points, just because we have like 1, 2, 3 list. So dot sales points before. We want content. We want position absolute. So there, I mean, there is repeated code on these, but it's so like, I'm just going to copy this actually, and then we're going to muck around with it a little bit. So that we don't need. There we go. Okay. So at small screens, it should be on the right side. So the right 0, top 0 is not going to work. And it's actually going to be really hard to line it up where we want it to be if we're relative to the viewport, but I can't think of a way. Now, actually, I've been doing this with background images. I just realized like this would actually make, I'm not going back on it now because I got it working. But this would actually make a lot more sense to just have the content coming in as the SVG itself, because then you don't have to worry about the overflow. Oh, Kevin. Okay, I'll show you the problem with this and why I'm going to change it. I'm happy I thought about it. So here, let's say the top now is like, where do we put it? 50 VH, let's just say. So it's showing up there. We get another one. So okay, that's not enough. We need it at 80. So you're sort of getting, oh look, we're cut off on the top now because we have to deal with the size of this and everything. And it's a background image, so it's just going to crop. And okay, so we just learned something. Background, we could do background size of contain. But then if we do that, we see the whole thing. So we can't really have it like flowing off without moving the pseudo. We run into problems with this and doing it as a background image. Now it made sense to do it as a background image here just because of how we had to set it up and the different constraints. For this one I got working, so I'm going to leave it. But I think it would have been better and I would have overcome some of the problems I was having. And we could have actually set it up with that original way of having it with my image rather than having to do it based on the viewport if we had done this. So yeah, it just becomes harder to manage. Basically, especially this one works based on the viewport because it's at the top of the page, so you can set a top 0. This one, we run into problems. It's not going to work. So we want to do this as content. Now, SVGs, there's different ways of bringing them in as pseudo elements in the content property, but I think we can just do this. Whoops, you don't need URL twice. I don't do this very often though, so I might have made a mistake. Ah, it did work though. Perfect. Yep. So here, I am actually going to do my sales points and do a position of relative. Now we can do a top of 0, and it makes life easier because we're dealing with the top of here. So we sort of know, and in this case, I might actually say bottom of 0, right of 0, width. Now we might, I don't know if we turned off side scroll, like if we have an overflow hidden. No, so it is overflowing, so we'll have to deal with that. That's fine though. Oh, I was saying, we're gonna top 100%. Negative? There it is, okay. So at small screen sizes, it's mucking up because we have some overflow, but let's just go back to Figma here for a second and see what they did. So it should be kind of by the button. So I almost want like the bottom of this to be at the top. So maybe actually what I should have done is bottom 100%, which doesn't seem to be quite working. Border 2 pixels solid red, just for fun. Why is oh, because okay, right. The bottom is going to the bottom of the div that we're putting it on right now, the sales points thing. Right? No, can't be. Whatever. That's more what we want. And the width, we can actually make this like a set value now. We'll say that it's 200 pixels. It looks pretty small. And we can take off the aspect ratio, the max height we can take off. There we go. So yeah, the bottom is working because it's at 100%, so it's lining up with that green box right there. So let's make this like 90 or 85, just to pull it down. I was right, probably 90. The width of it is super wrong though. Bottom, let's just take off the aspect ratio and make this like 100 pixels. Why? Oh, okay, so now we have the SVG in there going at full size. I was like, what's going on? I don't understand why it's shooting out like that, but it's because it's overflowing. Okay, I just spent a whole bunch of time trying to figure out a solution using something else, and because you can actually bring in SVGs like directly here and like put the code in. I thought it was going to work better, and for whatever reason with this shape, I can't do it. And I just deleted that part because I was banging my head against the wall. It would solve some issues that we're having in terms of controlling this probably a little bit better instead of having it come in as an image, because right now with an image, we can't control the size of the image itself. One way we can is with the zoom property. So zoom at like 25%, and then it makes it smaller. I don't know if that's like an ideal way to actually work, but it works. I have a bit of issue with that, but I'm happy that it sort of does it, and it has the advantage of it won't overflow. I think ideally you'd bring it here. I tried optimizing the SVG. I tried a whole bunch of stuff. I did it with other SVGs and I could get it to show up, but I couldn't do it with this one. I tried re-exporting it. I don't know. I got stuck. If you know the answer to what I was doing wrong, it's when you do it with So you'd start with this here, and then here you can literally have SVG and have your SVG like inlined here. It would not show up on the page. I was clearly doing something wrong. SVGs are not my strong point. So we'll stick with it like this for now, I guess, instead. So the issue is right now we're overflowing off the side. Now part of the reason we're doing that is because of how I have things set up, right? Right, clearly. So I have a right of 0. So what if we did right of 100% just for fun? It should move it over to that side. I'm a little distracted because I was trying to play around with it a little bit. So right is at like 30% maybe. We'll try that. Right or 70%, I guess. Or let's just do, yeah, I'm going to do 70. Left, right, left. That makes more sense. Okay, so it's about there. We can turn off this red border now. We have that thing coming in. The top of it needs to be up quite a bit higher. It's supposed to be closer to the button, and it sort of fills in that empty space we have. So that's my left, and then its bottom is at 90. Let's move that up to like 110, so it moves up 100-ish, something like that, right? It's around there, and I think the zoom, we could make that a little bit bigger. And I actually thought it was this thing causing my overflow right now, but it's not that. There's something else. Okay, so I was going crazy trying to find out what was causing an overflow issue right now, and I don't seem to have one. And it actually took me turning off responsive mode and turning it back on. And we never had an overflow issue, I think. Let's turn that back on, and now I have an overflow issue, which is expected because this was causing it, which I knew would be doing it, but then I was like turning that off and the overflow wasn't going away, which was really confusing me. Now, the problem this is going to present us with is because we do want to hide that. So let's go find my body, or HTML body probably, HTML body. Here we actually wanted to say overflow X is hidden, which can have repercussions at times. So let's see, there it is. Because this was positioned absolute relative to our root, which is our HTML, and the height of that is 100%, and now the overflow is hidden, it creates like the stacking context on it. So yeah, this happens. Now the way to fix that is just instead of a height, it's a min height, and that should fix that. Now the problem that can come up with that, so if I refresh, everything should be fine here. Yeah. So the problem that can come up from having a min height rather than a height is if you are doing things that sometimes it's good to have the height on there, and then those calculations sort of go out the window if something is based on the height of something else. So it could potentially have a side effect, but for this site, I think we're going to go with that. Now let's come back to what we're actually doing. This is my sales points. I'm going to make this even bigger, 40, because I think that fits more with like the sizing and the spacing and stuff. And it's never really encroaching too much. So I think that's fine. And then when we switch over to here, it looks really terrible. So that's why they moved it to that side. So at media, min width of 47em, which is our new size. Let's just grab this because a lot of it is going to change. The content will stay the same. The position will also be absolute. The Z index can stay the same, and everything else is probably going to get changed. So this will go down to like, or up, I should say, maybe to an 80% because it gets bigger. The left will turn, or the left can actually, let's just say -50 and see where that puts it. And then the bottom will become a top, and I'm going to do a top of 0 for now, and that's going to get changed, I'm guessing. So top, let's move that down 50%, 30%. Oh, maybe the 50 was good, actually. We sort of want it in that empty space, I think, right? Where does it go? Yeah, so it goes down maybe a little bit less. So we'll do a top of 45%. It could be pixel-based too, but whatever. The advantage, that shouldn't make a difference, actually. If the content changed, I guess it could have by doing it with percentage, the content sort of has an impact on it. So we get to here, and then, oh, that's not good. Woo, it flies off the side because I left that as a left. I've been fighting this, and the reason I'm fighting it, and I'm just not being smart about it, is I've put it as a pseudo element on the wrong thing. Right now it's a pseudo element on this entire thing, so it's always going to stay like stuck to the full width of my page when I really want it to be positioned more with this. Which would make more sense. Now it's going to mean mucking around a little bit more. Container, so I'm going to keep the name sales points on that whole thing. I'm not looking at anything important off screen, but we have the sales points. So I think what we're going to do is on this one. H2, no, we can do it on this. So yeah, this is going to make, I'm going to have to readjust the first one, but we're going to have a sales points, which is fine. And then on this one, we're going to do sales points blob. So we have the blobby thing coming in here. And I'm wondering if I should have done the same thing at the top. But we got the top one working. There's no issues there. So this would just be sales points blob, copy, paste, paste. And now, oh, look, I didn't even adjust anything. And if I can manage to get my browser, now when we get to, that's better. That looks nicer that it's like filling up that. It's kind of weird how it comes down to here, I guess, at really big screens, but it makes more sense to me. So maybe what I'll actually do is make it a little bit smaller. So the zoom here could be maybe a 70. Just so it sort of goes less into that next section. Maybe the top could move up 43, 42, something like that, just so it's less involved with that, but it's still coming out that way. Or maybe we make it a lot bigger, 90? No, because we could make it sort of stick off the page more, because if I make it bigger, we just pull it over more, like this could be 700 maybe. Or maybe that's the right idea. So, you know, it's no matter what, oh, this is true, this is always gonna be full width, so it's always gonna sort of dive into that area no matter what. So we'll fix that again, and then at this small screen size, oh look, it's still working pretty much how we had it before. So we just have to move it up a smidgen. But overall, it's not too bad. So let's move this back to there, undo. I think we're okay. I think that's pretty good. And then we want to just fix it here. So that is my top, or my bottom just needs to be moved up. Something like that. And then it's there, and then it comes down to there. Cool. Maybe this could be, yeah, like that. And then it gets bigger, and then it jumps to the other side. That one ended up being a lot harder than I thought it would be, but we got there in the end. So almost done. We're going to do a little bit more house cleaning in the last video, try and clean up a few last things on some spacing stuff, I guess. Primarily, and the footer I might refactor completely to get it to behave the way it's supposed to at the different viewports. We'll take a look at that. We'll figure that one out in the next video. So yeah, that last part, I was so happy with the progress we made, and that last one I banged my head against the wall for a while. I edited some of it out, but we're almost there. I look forward to seeing you next week when we'll wrap this entire thing up.